And let's talk about the SEC. Tell us about how you and the folks at Empower Oversight came across this lawsuit situation. And I want to get your perspective on it and all the reportings of conflicts of interest. People are very angry and upset. They're seeing all these things, like you said, the research and the speeches and the meetings and so forth. So tell us, from your perspective, what you're seeing.
Sure. Well, so as I said, Gary Aguirre, who works with me, is a former SEC whistleblower and a former SEC attorney. And he's also written, actually, after his SEC career, he became a whistleblower attorney. And he has actually written quite a bit on crypto issues. So it's not something I had followed as much, before this necessarily. But we obviously we scan the news and the newspapers and articles for it's just something I did when I was on the Hill too. One of the ways you look for issues to get involved in and to sort of start pulling threads on is to just look around and see what's going on out there that's controversial, and what are people getting upset about and why, and is there some additional sunlight and transparency that can be brought to that issue, right? So, we saw the reports. If you look through our complaint, and in fact, and our FOIA request itself, we lay out all the articles and news reports and so forth where people were raising this as a potential issue. And it seemed to me, I saw that there was this fight over deliberative process and Ripple's, requests for information and discovery in the lawsuit. And I thought, well, wait a minute. If people have a concern that there's a potential conflict here, well, why don't we just look for communications with the ethics office and communications with the people that they went to work for or the people that they used to work for? And let's just ask for those, because there isn't any deliberative, when you're talking about communications with outsiders or communications with the ethics office, a lot of that's not going to be deliberative process privilege. It's not going to be pre-decisional information. So they should have to disclose that to the extent that there might be any records like that. And so, we did the FOIA request, didn't know what would happen, didn't know whether they would be responsive and non-responsive, although I wasn't holding my breath. The first thing they did was they did not, they tried to tell us that we were going to have to pay a whole bunch of fees. They weren't going to treat us as a news media requester or a requester that, they're going to treat us as someone who had a financial interest, right? Which we didn't, because they charge high fees to companies who are doing it, for their own personal, or commercial purposes, right? But that's not us. We're a nonprofit. We're 501c3 educational organization. We were entitled, and we publish everything, we're very transparent. We publish everything on our website, all the FOIA requests as we make them, the responses that we get from the agencies, they're all up there. We issue our press releases, and, we have an email list, and, we do all that stuff. So, we should, and other groups like ours have been treated as, quote, media requesters, where they don't have to pay huge fees to get records. So we appealed that decision because that was going to make it impossible. We're a small nonprofit. There was no way we would be able to pay those high fees like a Bloomberg or somebody like that would be able to pay. So we appealed that decision and we won. And we posted the appeal and we posted the decision in our favor on that. And then, time just kept ticking away, and they were beyond their statutory deadlines. They're supposed to respond within 20 business days, unless there's something that extends that. Like if there's some kind of special extenuating circumstances or unusual circumstances, they can extend the deadline. But basically we weren't getting any communications from the SEC other than, here's 2 categories of your 8 categories that we already did our search for and we couldn't find anything. But there was no indication and no, a lot of times agencies will actually communicate with you and they'll tell you, we've pulled this many records, we've got this many that we're going through, they're being reviewed, it's going to take us some time. And if you get a sense that they're actually cooperating, then you can be more patient. But we basically heard nothing other than, here's these two categories where there's nothing. And then it's radio science, and then they denied our, then they tried to charge us a bunch of money, and then they changed their mind on that after we appealed. But other than that, we had no, it wasn't like we were getting a FOIA officer calling us and saying, okay, I've gathered, we got 10,000 records. We got to go through them and figure out which exemptions we can redact what for, there was nothing. So, so we looked into, enforcing our rights to the documents in court, and ended up drafting the complaint and filing it. We filed it last Wednesday. We announced it Friday morning. And within 2 hours, actually, I'll give you some news that we haven't announced yet. So within 2 hours after us, or so of us announcing publicly that we had filed the suit, we actually got responses on 2 more of our 8 categories from the SEC. I
wonder what sparked that response.
I don't know if it was the press release or if it was just, happenstance, but they did discover. If you look at, actually, I don't know, you might want to put this up on the screen later for your viewers, but if you look at pages 6 and 7 of our complaint in district court, we have there listed what all of our requests were. Mm-hmm. So the first 2 that they had told us before we filed that they hadn't found any records were the ones that are listed there on page 7 as F and H. So when we filed our suit, we were still, we hadn't had any response from them on A, B, C, D, E, and G. Mm-hmm. Well, 2 hours after we filed, they told us, oh, yeah, we also don't have any records for A and B. So A and B are the ones where we were seeking communications with Hinman, any communications between Hinman and Simpson Thatcher, and B rather is where we were seeking any communications between Hinman and the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. So those are the 2 additional ones after we made our announcement on Friday that they have now said they also have no responsive documents for. So that leaves 4 categories out of the 8 where we still don't have a reply from them. And those are the ones that we're still going to be pressing them for.
Now, when they say they don't have any records, can that be trusted, or could they be lying, or it's, how does that work?
Yeah. So we don't have any evidence that they're not telling the truth. We can probe and ask them questions about what kind of search they did. And the way the law works is they have to demonstrate that they've done a search that's reasonably likely to come up with responsive documents, right? So they have to do, that's the standard. So if you were to go to court and say, well, we don't believe, we don't believe that you did a reasonable search for A and B, tell us what you did to search for them. And well, that's not adequate. You could have looked here. If they say, well, we pulled the email records for Mr. Hinman, and we performed the following keyword searches, right? Then and there were no responses. Then that's a perfectly reasonable response. And there's nothing really, you can say about that unless you have an insider telling you, hey, they're not telling you the truth. But the other thing to remember is, we were just looking to see if there might, we didn't know whether there were any communications in any of these categories. We were just asking to see if there were. And then the other issue is, these are, obviously we can only ask for what the SEC has in its files. So, if the people that we named here were having communications on personal devices with the organizations named, obviously that's not going to come up in an SEC, in an SEC record search. So, it doesn't mean that there were no communications. It just means that the SEC did a search and that search did not come up with any in the SEC files.